After being unjustly imprisoned, a dog is forced to become a samurai to defend a village full of cats who despise him and consider him an enemy. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank, from 2022. In a temple full of cats, Lord Ika humiliates his subordinates. He wants to remove the town of Kakamucho from its location, as it obstructs the view from his palace. However, there is a samurai protecting the village, so he asks his warrior to defeat him in secret. Meanwhile, some kittens graffiti a sign at the entrance to the town, then are surprised by dozens of looters breaking in, so a kitten called Amiko rushes to warn the vigilante. The children go out and alert the whole population, making them hide. The samurai lord is a huge cat wearing warrior's armor. After the hero gets on his horse, everyone expects him to do something, but the animal starts sweating profusely and runs off, leaving only his sword behind. In this way, all the felines become desperate, except the children who take up arms to fight, but the adults remove them from the battlefield. The bandits invade the houses on their horses, throwing shurikens and flaming arrows at the houses. The next day, the citizens gather and demand that Shogun, the leader of the kingdom, choose a new samurai to defend them. At the chief's palace, he receives news of the village. He then decides to order Ika to find a new warrior, passing the information on through various subordinates. However, the lord has plans to wipe out the village, so he decides to do what his boss wants, but in a way that works to his advantage. In one of the kingdom's prisons, the guards take a dog out of its cell, which has only been locked up because it is a different breed, and send it straight to execution. However, while his opponents are distracted, the dog called Hank takes the opportunity to dig a hole in the ground and escape by stealth. So he runs from the cats and knocks over boxes along the way to get in the way of his pursuers. He climbs a crane and one of the guards manages to climb up after him, but the canine escapes again and enters a dark place, locking the door. At the same moment, he realizes he's back in his own cell. At the same time, Ika plans to find the worst warrior in the world to send to the village. At that moment, the dog is about to be eliminated and the lord decides that he would be the perfect subject for the mission, since felines hate dogs. The evil cat stops his guards from shooting the arrows at the animal, and one of them ends up going out of control and into the prisoner, but one of the guards stops it before it hits him. The animal then puts the dog on a horse and hands it a samurai mug, deceiving the poor thing by saying that the object represents his profession, after which he frightens the horse, which shoots towards Kakamucho. The lord believes that the citizens will try to take the newcomer's life, since he is a dog who doesn't know how to fight. After that, they will all be arrested for attacking a warrior, as this is against local law, so he will complete his plan to wipe out the village. Shortly afterwards, the dog walks towards the village, which throws a party to welcome him, but he doesn't even notice that there is a no dog sign at the entrance to the place. When the townspeople recognize the dog's breed, they all go after him, who runs off down the alley, but ends up getting hit by a cat. When the felines look for biscuits in the animal's pockets, he starts laughing and everyone realizes that he was just pretending. He shows them his samurai mug, but they all start making fun of him, as possession of the object means nothing. Amiko then shows her an official shogun scroll, which says that the canine has been sent to protect the village. In his palace, Ika is enraged to see that the newcomer has not been attacked and decides to send his most powerful warrior to destroy him. Upon entering his quarters, Hank is enchanted by the place and puts on a suit of armor. Soon after, he realizes that there is someone there, a retired warrior who is drunk and is known as Jimbo. Outside, the ninjas are attacking the city, hitting all the citizens. So the new samurai goes to the battlefield and tries to talk to two criminals who are attacking a cat. Just as he manages to get his sword out of its sheath, his kimono falls off and he ends up being hit with a powerful blow, causing him to faint. Hank realizes that the former vigilante is the one who can teach him to be a warrior, and he needs to become one, since he doesn't want to be arrested again. What's more, a long time ago he was being attacked by some bandits and a samurai saved him. So he was inspired by the soldier and traveled to the Cat Kingdom carrying his idol's lost sword. When he shows Jimbo the weapon, he realizes that it was his, revealing that he has met the dog before. Even so, the former warrior doesn't want to train him because the animal is too clumsy. When the canine leaves the house, the cat realizes that Amiko was watching everything. At that moment, the child reminds him of his oath, which states that he must help everyone in need. Based on this, Jimbo takes a contract to the camp, asking his new student to sign the samurai oath and claim that he must always obey his master. When he tries to write, the pen clogs up and the dog ends up splashing ink in the feline's face, so he uses his own paw as a stamp. In his first training session, Hank is unable to defend himself against any of his teacher's blows. What's more, they cross a river by jumping through bamboos, but the dog ends up catching a hold of one of them, throwing him over the cliff wall. Soon after, the apprentice is forced to climb, but he can't do it as easily as a feline, and he can't land on his feet either. In the next step, the dog must shoot an arrow that is tied to a rope, so that it can cross to the other side of the cliff. However, the animal ends up tangling the rope in its own foot, causing it to fall after being dragged. When Hank finally manages to hit the arrow, he tries to cross by holding onto the rope, but ends up burning his hands, so he lets go of the rope and falls into the water once again. The dog fails one training session after another, receiving blows from the dummies and being thrown into the rocks thousands of times. In the evening, the student claims that his teacher isn't teaching him and accuses him of being a charlatan. The teacher then begins to cut the pizza ingredients with great skill, demonstrating that he really is a warrior. What's more, Jimbo reveals that a long time ago he was summoned to a meeting late at night, and everything indicated that it was an ambush. So he started attacking everyone in the place, discovering in the end that it was actually a surprise birthday party. After this event, the retired samurai decided to abandon his profession because he had broken his oath. The master decides not to teach the dog to be a cat, but understands that he needs to use his canine instincts to help him. So he puts a blindfold over his eyes and his disciple begins to hear noises from a long distance away, as well as smelling smells that are very far from him. The dog finally manages to dodge the attacks, and instead of climbing over the wall, he digs a hole in the ground and crosses over to the other side. The animal also crosses the precipice by jumping over the bamboos with ease. Later, they fight and Hank manages to dodge the attacks of his master, who tricks him and throws him away using the strength of the bamboo. In his palace, Aika is almost crushed by the piece of a statue that his subordinates drop, which angers him even more. When he realizes that the bandits are failing in their mission, he decides to send the most powerful warrior known as Sumo. The next day, an earthquake hits the village and everyone notices a giant cat riding a small pig, yet he knocks down the horses in a parking lot with just one punch. As he enters the establishment, he deftly throws a piano into the street. At the same moment, Amiko rushes to warn Hank about the attack. However, Jimbo believes that they shouldn't do anything, since they're not ready for a battle. The girl then decides to do something on her own. Even so, the teacher doesn't care what happens to her, since she's not his student. Amiko goes up to the enemy and strikes him with her sword, tearing the hair from his belly. The animal tries to attack her, but she manages to dodge quickly because she is so small and fast. He then catches her in his hands, but she hits him on the nose, causing him to release her. After that, the girl rolls to a considerable distance and the opponent throws a disc at her, and the girl is saved by Hank, who shows up to fight. When the enemy approaches the dog tries to threaten him, but the big guy hits him, causing him to be thrown away. At that moment, a vegetable falls on the face of Sumo, who is allergic to the plant, so he puts his face in a barrel of water to relieve the symptoms. Nevertheless, he recovers quickly and throws the dog away. Even at a disadvantage, Hank is encouraged by his master to keep attacking. This time, the giant uses one of the cats as a weapon to strike the dog. Meanwhile, Jimbo encourages his disciple to use his intelligence to win, since he doesn't have enough skills yet. Even so, the big animal continues to win and crushes his opponent with the weight of his body. Jimbo uses his last card and throws a piece of vegetable into the animal's mouth, so that the dog can hold it by its ears, knocking him down. Later, the samurai apprentice takes Sumo to the doctor and shows off for having won the battle, causing him to receive an extremely strong blow. However, the big one thanks Hank because he's never been beaten before or treated like that, and now he wants to help the villagers. At the same time, two cats come out of the bushes and hand the dog some toys, but they hide so that the other citizens don't realize that they're helping the guy. Another cat also thanks him for saving the city. After discovering that his champion has been defeated, Aika decides to go to the village. One sunny day, Hank is surprised by the Lord, who arrives in a limousine inviting him to a party, and the dog decides to accept, even if he has to do his training. Jimbo is upset that the dog has broken his promise, so he throws his sword at the contract, breaking the glass and tearing the sheet. When he arrives at the party, the dog is treated like Kakamucho's hero, given a VIP entrance and the attention of all the girls. While he's having fun at the party, the boss's henchmen start attacking the village. At the end of the night, Hank is distracted and Aika takes the opportunity to pay off his subordinates who were pretending to be ordinary guests at the impromptu party. The next day, the apprentice arrives at the village and realizes that everything has been destroyed. He meets up with his master, who is going on a mission to save Sumo, who has been captured. What's more, he forbids the dog to accompany him because he's not a real samurai. Even Amiko rejects Hank because he has abandoned them, so the dog decides to leave. During his journey, the dog finds an origami he won from the kitten. so he decides to return. He surprises his master by suddenly appearing in enemy territory. After making a lot of noise, they end up attracting the attention of their opponents and being surrounded. Jimbo then uses his sword to strike several blows and hands his subordinate a weapon. The samurai pretends to be one of the guards escorting a prisoner, who is Hank in disguise. One of the enemies checks the cage and the dog attacks him by surprise, so his master makes his opponent faint and they manage to break in. They find Sumo's cell easily, but they don't have the key to the door, so Jimbo strikes a few blows with his sword, making a cut that frees the passage. The three of them then stealthily flee the scene. However, the samurai apprentice ends up stepping on a cat's tail, causing the animal to scream and alert all the other enemies. Sumo acts quickly and makes his way through the crowd of warriors, knocking several of them down at once with his powerful punch. They are about to flee the scene, but the gate starts to close. The big one holds the door open for them to pass through, but the sensei ends up trapped inside with the soldiers. The master attacks his opponents because it's the only thing he can do, while his friends leave the place devastated. Upon arriving in the village, the dog realizes that everyone is leaving because an army has been announced after Aika spread the word that he needed bandit warriors. Thousands of looters arrive in the Cat Kingdom, destroying everything with their giant boats and submarines. The army ranges from bikers to studio executives bent on destroying the village. At the same time, Hank announces to the villagers that Jimbo has been arrested after trying to protect the place. The dog tries to encourage the felines to fight for the town, but the animals cut the phone line and remove one of the cats who was sending the message. While the samurai apprentice plans a new war strategy, using folded paper to win the battle, the citizens receive a signal that a giant army is coming to the village. At the same moment, Ichiro fires his gun at the dynamites in order to blow up all the enemies, but a bird gets in front of him and he misses the only bullet he had. The population needs to think of a strategy quickly, because the soldiers will soon discover that the village is a fake, since it was made by folding paper. So the dog uses another weapon and shoots a flaming arrow, hitting one of the bombs, which causes an explosion. When they all go into battle, Hank fights bravely, striking with his sword and using a rope, which he wraps around his opponent's neck. On the other hand, Sumo ends up being shot, which causes him to capture the Kina gun and destroy it with his own teeth. When the shogun appears on the battlefield, the lord gets out of his limousine and cowardly accuses the dog, saying he started the war, so the animal orders his warrior to defeat Hank. However, Jimbo suddenly appears and defends his friend. The master then realizes that he knows the shogun and has been friends with him for a long time. The sensei then explains that his student was trying to defend Kakamucho while Aika was planning to destroy the city. Realizing that no one believed his lies, the animal runs to the giant toilet in his house. However, the warrior dog manages to get ahead of him and surprises him by reaching the top of the structure first. They go into battle, but their swords end up falling on the ribbon over the edge. At that moment, Aika pushes his opponent, who manages to hold on and return to the surface. Then they chase each other around the edge of the toilet. Faced with the situation, Hank decides to face up to the challenge and pick up his sword. Then the lord tries to get in his way, and the two weapons fall into the dog's hands. Nevertheless, the apprentice returns his opponent's sword and the two begin to fight on a tightrope. The canine manages to disarm his enemy, who begs for mercy, but tricks him and knocks him over the edge, making him hold on to the tape. At that moment, the apprentice throws his samurai mug at Aika, causing him to fall into the toilet. However, one of his subordinates appears and throws him a piece of toilet paper to hold on to, but the roll runs out. So the warrior jumps into the water to save his boss, so the pair flush down the toilet and the big one ends up clogging the toilet, which causes a torrent and knocks down everything around the giant structure. The samurai realize that the palace will collapse due to the force of the water and all the debris will head towards the village. So they improvise a zip line and quickly reach Kakamucho, warning the villagers of the danger. The dog claims that everyone should help dig a hole to drain the water, since the cats can't swim. Realizing that the current is approaching faster and faster, Sumo moves all the animals out of the way and starts digging quickly, opening up a space in the ground for the river to pass through. However, some of the children were unable to get out in time and were swept away by the current. At that moment, Amiko runs after them, hanging onto one of the branches to catch them, but ends up being swept away. Then several cats jump into the water and form a rope that Sumo holds while leaning on a tree. The children end up at the bottom of the lake, clinging to a root. However, the big cat doesn't have enough strength to hold on and ends up falling, but one of the enemy's soldiers helps him back to the surface while the dog manages to catch the children. Shogun decides to appoint Jimbo as a samurai again, but he believes that the dog deserves the title. Hank also refuses the appointment, as he is still training with his teacher, who hasn't released him from his duties, so he passes the official warrior sword on to Amiko. After everything that happened, the citizens changed the city sign to "Dogs Allowed on Site." So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.